The dim light from the street lamps filtered through the curtains as David paced the living room. His mind buzzed with a torrent of emotions. He couldn't untangle anger, sadness, confusion. His heart raced, and his fingers trembled as he held his wife's phone, the incriminating message glaring back at him. "I can't stop thinking about you, Justin. Last night was incredible." The words stabbed him deeper than any physical pain ever could. He had suspected for months that something was off between him and Maria, but now there was no denying the truth. She was having an affair. The front door creaked open, and Maria stepped in, oblivious to the storm about to break. She smiled absent-mindedly, a distant look in her eyes, as she dropped her keys on the table. But when her gaze fell on David standing in the shadows, holding her phone, her face drained of color. "David," she whispered, her voice barely audible, as if all the air had been sucked from the room. She knew, he couldn't speak, his mouth's dry and words lodged in his throat. Instead, he thrust the phone toward her, the message still open, demanding an explanation without saying a word. Maria's eyes filled with tears, her hands shaking as she reached out, but David pulled the phone away. "I trusted you," he finally managed to choke out. I thought you were different." Tears streamed down her face. "David, please, let me explain." "Explain? What could you possibly explain, Maria? You've been lying to me for months." He felt his heart pounding against his chest. The betrayal was suffocating, but the burning need to know the why kept him rooted. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper now. 6 months, she admitted, her voice thick with guilt. David recoiled as though he'd been struck. 6 months of lies. 6 months of pretending. 6 months of someone else. The room felt like it was closing in on him. He ran his hands through his hair, pacing to keep himself from collapsing under the weight of it all. "Who is he?" "Justin," she whispered, confirming the name he'd already seen. "We met through work, but it wasn't like that at first. I didn't mean for this to happen." David laughed, but it was humorless, empty. "You didn't mean for it to happen. That's supposed to make it better? Do you love him?" Her silence was the only answer he needed. Just as he turned to leave, his mind screaming at him to get out of there, Maria reached out, grabbing his arm. "David, wait. There's more to this. Please, hear me out. More." "What else could you possibly say?" Maria hesitated, biting her lip, knowing the next words would shatter him further. "Justin saved my life." David froze, her words slicing through his anger like a sharp blade. He turned to her, eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" Maria collapsed into the nearest chair, her sobs racking her body. 2 months ago, something happened. She wiped her face, struggling to find the strength to continue. "I was in a car accident. A man ran a red light, and I was trapped. The car was filling with smoke, and I could not move. I thought I was going to die." David's heart skipped a beat, the image of her trapped and helpless searing itself into his mind. He hadn't known about the accident. She had never mentioned it. Justin was there. "He was passing by when it happened, and he pulled me out. He saved me." She looked up at David, her eyes pleading. "I was not even supposed to be there that night. We were supposed to meet earlier, but I had second thoughts, and we were both leaving when the accident happened." David's anger wavered, confusion swirling in its place. His wife had nearly died, and he hadn't even known. And the man she was cheating with, the man she loved, had been her savior. But the betrayal still stung. The facts, no matter how dramatic, didn't change the why. "Why did not you tell me?" David asked, his voice softer now, but still heavy with emotion. Maria shook her head, her hands trembling. "I did not know how. I did not want to tell you I was with him. I felt so ashamed. But Justin was the one who saved me. He risked his life. After that, things got complicated." David took a step back, his mind reeling. Everything was spiraling out of control. His wife had cheated, but the man she was cheating with had also saved her. Nothing was black and white anymore. Should he hate her? Should he thank him? Why did not you stop? David asked, his voice breaking. If you felt ashamed, if you felt guilty, why did not you end it? Maria lowered her head, unable to meet his eyes. I tried. But after the accident, I felt connected to him in a way I could not explain. He saved me. I felt indebted to him. And then, it just continued. David turned away, staring out the window, watching the night stretch endlessly before him. He did not know what to do. The anger, the heartbreak, it was still there, burning inside him. But so was the confusion, the guilt of not knowing what the right thing was anymore. In the silence, a thought struck him. What if Justin had not been there? What if she had died that night? Would he have ever known about the affair? Would he have forgiven her more easily if she were gone? His thoughts spiraled out of control, and for the first time in his life, he didn't know how to handle his emotions. His gut screamed to leave her, to never look back, but his heart was torn. David, Maria said, her voice soft, almost pleading. I know what I did was unforgivable. I know that. But I need you to understand. I never stopped loving you. I lost myself for a while. David's jaw clenched, his mind racing. He could leave. He could walk out the door, disappear into the night, and never look back. He could start over, but then, the image of her trapped in that burning car flashed before him again. The woman he had loved for years, the woman who had been his world, had come so close to death. The anger was still there, but beneath it, something else stirred, something he hadn't expected. Fear. Fear of losing her for good. Fear of never seeing her again, despite everything. I don't know if I can forgive you, David said, his voice raw. I don't know if I'll ever be able to. Maria nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I just wanted you to know the truth. The room fell into silence once more, the weight of the moment pressing down on them both. David's mind swirled with the impossibility of the situation. His wife's betrayal had broken him, but the thought of her almost dying. He could not leave. Not yet. Not tonight. I'm going to stay at a friend's, David said, grabbing his coat. Maria stood, looking as though she might collapse under the weight of her grief. Okay, she whispered, her voice small and fragile. As David walked out the door, his mind was still in turmoil. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time since discovering the affair, he was not certain of anything, not even his own feelings. Maybe forgiveness would come, maybe it would not, but for now, all David knew was that the woman he loved was still alive, and despite the betrayal, some part of him was grateful for that.